That's interesting. I like that.
That's a really good picture.
I like it.
That was like really psyched when I saw that.
What is your last screen?
My lock screen.
All right.
It's better.
Thing.
All right. So it's Monday. I'm gonna try to get coherent thoughts out.
You can do it.
I can. It's just gonna take a little processing. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rest of the semester because we are on the home stretch here.
You can't get rid of me, by the way. We're done. I'm still bothering you.
Okay, fine. It's not really a threat. Okay. So today we're going to start on week 13, lists and more strings. So we're gonna talk about strings a little bit more again, do some stuff with them. Mostly we're just gonna use them inside of lists.
Ooh. Oh, that's why we're doing chapters.
Yeah. So I need you to pull out that knowledge you have about strings because when we read stuff in from a list, we're gonna need the strings again. Especially when we get to the next section on files because it's gonna read each row of the file into the string and then we're gonna manipulate the string. So there's method to my madness, I promise. So we're gonna do that. There is some reading. A little bit of it comes from chapter 7 in books. Majority of it comes from chapter 8. So I think I have all those iBooks reading turned on now. I haven't transferred grades from books in the last couple of weeks. I just realized that as I was talking to students this morning. So I need to go do that and get it into Coursed-In. It doesn't auto transfer. So if you haven't done your reading, you better get it done before I get over there and transfer grades.
What chapter is it?
I don't know. I don't know what you've read and what you haven't. So, that being said, the rest of the semester is really short. It's going to zoom right by you because Thanksgiving breaks in there. And we're finishing up the first week in December. Yeah. So we're going to have this week and next week and then Thanksgiving break. We're going to have 1 week when we get back from Thanksgiving break, which is going to be your final exam week and finishing up your last project. I'm not doing anything new content that last week because we're going to wrap everything up. We're going to have our final exam. We're going to do a departmental quiz that I'm required to give you. That's going to be low stakes, but we need you to do it. I didn't assign anything for Thanksgiving break. The final exam for this class is supposed to be on or around December 3rd, but I'll do like I normally do. I'll open it up and give you at least a couple of days. Do it online. May not get a whole week because that's a short week. And it's not really any longer a test than anything else. Somebody's always asked, is it comprehensive? Yes, because every test in here has been comprehensive. They've all built on each other. Because you can't do the stuff at the end of the semester if you don't know how to do the stuff at the beginning of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I don't have anything planned new for Thanksgiving break. You will have project 3 already out. It is nowhere near as long as project 2 that you're on currently. Okay. Well, in my opinion, it's not.
This is true.
So you will have 2 class weeks to work on it because I'm going to assign it before Thanksgiving goes out. We're going to do all the content the week before that you need. I'm going to go ahead and put the assignment for project 3 out. I will go ahead and briefly go over it the Friday before Thanksgiving. If you want to start on it during Thanksgiving break and do some of it yourself, that's perfectly up to you. If not, we're going to have 1 week to work on it when we get back. I think that's fair. I'm trying to make, I don't want to work during Thanksgiving break, so I'm trying to make it where you don't have a whole lot of stuff to do during Thanksgiving break. Somebody else will probably may give you projects or something too, so. I want to see my family too. That being said, let's go back to today. Today we are going to work on lists. I have a nice little PowerPoint for you. Oh, one other thing. I am going out of town this weekend, so there will be no Friday class this week.
Where you at?
To see my in-laws in Illinois. Southern Illinois, not Chicago. But, questions so far? Anybody have a scheduling question? My planner people, you're all good, right?
Yeah, everybody's in my class. Okay.
Good. Okay, now, everybody repeat after me because there seems to always be some confusion. And somebody's gonna email me 3 times on Thursday. Are we having class on Friday? There is no class Friday.
There is
Okay.
no Friday.
November the 3rd, no class. I will be in a car for 8 hours on Thursday, so I will not be answering emails for those desperate people going, are we meeting in the morning? If you email me Thursday night, I'm gonna get in the car about 2:30, and I won't get out of the car until probably midnight. All right. If it happens, I guarantee you it happens. All right. I'll post it on CourseDent also, just so you guys know. All right, let's talk about slides for this week. Just ignore this one that has dates in it because it was imported from another semester. So ignore the ones about the dates because they're obviously from the spring semester because it's not April. Okay, good. So let's talk about data types one more time just to revisit it and make you all, we'll call it review, right? So we talked about data types. We've done ints, floats, booleans, and strings, right? Int, float, and boolean are primitive data types. That means that they're just very simple data types that take up storage. Yes, I'm oversimplifying what they are, but that's okay for this class. Strings are a collection data type because they're individual characters put together to make a bigger data type, right? This means you're following. They're also sometimes referred to as object data types because they're an object that has more to them. Yes.
Okay, so a string is an object composed of smaller pieces, and a
Yes.
list can contain multiple of those.
Yes, we haven't got there yet. Let me explain lists before you get there. So this is data types we are going to use. Now, we are fixing to start talking about lists, which are collections. They collect up different things into one storage unit or one data type. So, letters is a string. It's a collection of characters because each letter inside the string is its own individual character. You can use the string notations or the list notation with the square brackets to access the different characters inside of a list. This is why I said we're going to revisit strings because they're the simplest form of a list, which you've already been using. So we're going to use the indexing of a string and a list to access different points of these collection data types. Now, Python will let you index it in both directions, which I don't particularly like. I learned to program with C, C++, and Java. They don't do this indexing from the back. If they do, nobody ever taught it to me. But I'm making you aware of it in case you want to use it. So if you index from the rear, that means that the last thing is -1. And the first thing is the length of the list negative the length of the list. So if you have 6 elements in your list, and if you're indexing from the rear, you use negative numbers. It starts at 1 at the end, and then -2 is the next one, and it comes from the end of the list to the front of the list. Some people will find uses for this. That's fine. I've introduced it to you. I've told you about it. The book is going to talk about it a little bit. We're not going to use it probably in any of our code. Because it makes so much more sense just to start at the beginning and count up. Now, the difference you really do need to know about rear indexing and regular indexing is regular indexing starts at 0. Rear indexing starts at -1. Why? Because you can't have a 0 on both ends of your list. Right? And there's no such thing as a -0. It's just 0. So, again, that's a little bit of a confusion thing for you. So always remember, if you're indexing from the front, we're going to start at 0. The first element is always going to be 0. If we're indexing from the rear, the last element always starts at -1. Now, some of the things that we're going to talk about in strings that we touched on a little bit before, but we didn't do a lot of, is how to divide them and things that we can do with them. So you can slice a string. So if you have A, B, C, D, E, F, but you only need like the first 3 letters, you can use the shortcut or the operands to put in the starting point and the ending point you want to be in the list, and it will slice it into pieces. That makes sense? Now, if you do this, again, back to that whole, one of them's inclusive, one of them's not. The starting one is included in what is sliced. The ending index is not included. So you get, if you put 0 and 3 in, you get element 0, 1, and 2. 3 is not included in the new string. And when you do this, it does create a brand new string. So if you set it equal to a variable, you could save it and have a piece of a string as your new string. If you just put it in a print statement, it prints it and then throws it away. So if you don't put the ending point, you just put a starting point, it goes from there to the end of the string. Yes.
Would similar apply if you just give it an endpoint?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never tried that, but I don't think so. You can try it, see? You're more than welcome to try it, see? All right, so you can use a special for loop, which we're going to be using a lot with our list. And what we do is we can create a variable to hold a single element of the list, and then do for that element in, and then the name of the list, and it will iterate through everything in the list. Now, if you only want to do part of the list, you have to go back to a regular for loop and do indexing. But if you are doing the entire list, you can just do it this way, where you set up a temporary variable to hold the current character in letters, and it will go through every character in the string letters, and it will print them out one at a time. Does that make sense? I'm going really fast. This is going to be a really short slide deck because we've done a lot of this stuff with the strings. But you guys have got to stop me if you don't understand, because I'm getting a whole lot of blank stares. I know it's Monday, it's early. You also can use the in range function where you create, use I in range, and then you can use the length of the string or the length of the list as your endpoint. Both of these work. I don't know why you would want to. If you know you're going to do the whole string or the whole list, use the top one because it's so much easier, right? You don't have to worry about whether or not you got the length right, all that stuff. But either one works. If this is less confusing for you, do it the way you've been doing. It is extra steps because you have to go in and do get the current character by using I in letters. So it's just one more line of code, really. But I'm lazy, so I don't want to type an extra line of code if I don't have to. And every line of code you type is one more opportunity to have a typo or mess up a variable and get frustrated and yell at me. Or send me emails that I don't answer over the weekend. Right, Colby? You sent me emails I didn't answer over the weekend. So these links I think work. Let's see. Maybe not. Okay, the overview doesn't, but the actual API list does. This will take you in and you can look and see what all the operators and stuff are, but you also can go look up the string functions. You can put string in here. And it tells you everything you could possibly ever want to do with a string. You got all these different functions and stuff you can do with strings, right? This is going to come in handy when you start doing your homework and stuff, and you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. You can go use some of the built-in string functions. You also can Google search them, but this has it all together. I'll go see if I can get that other link to work, but I don't know why one of them works in one. Oh, because it's one of those Runestone Academy books. Don't worry about the Runestone one. They moved everything. All the Runestone stuff is just moved all over the place. Hence the reason I stopped using their book. Because they would randomly move stuff in the middle of semesters. All right, so let's talk about lists. Lists can hold different things. They can hold different types of data. So you could have numbers and strings inside of a list. You can have characters and numbers inside of a list. You can have floats. You can have integers. You can have lists inside of your list. So this first one is a list of strings. Because anything with quotes around it becomes a string, right? It's also a list of names. I will strongly encourage you to give all of your lists variable names that kind of associate to what's inside of them, because you'll forget what it means if you don't later. So the second list is integers because it's grades. Oddly enough, guess what we're going to use as our example? Anybody got a guess? We're going to create a simple grade book. Yeah. So this third one with roster is a mixture of names and numbers. So you can assume that the name and the number pairs go together and you have somebody's names and their grade. The last one down here is a list of lists. So it has 3 elements in it, but each of those elements is a list in and of itself. I'm going to leave the really complicated stuff out this semester. We're not going to get into dictionaries or tuples. We're just going to do simple lists. If you have an interest in dictionaries and tuples, please feel free to read about them. But I'm not going to cover them. They're the optional sections in the reading assignments for this week. Are there uses for them? Absolutely, but we don't really need them, and they're kind of exclusively used in Python. So when you get to Java, you don't need to know about dictionaries because they use array lists and other things that we don't have in Python. So you can index these lists just like those strings were indexed. Each element in the list has an index number. In the case of names, John is at index 0. Sally is at index 1, and Greg is index 2. Right? Same with students. John and 89 is at index 1 because that's a list. Sally and 78 are at index 2. John and 89 are at index 0. Getting ahead of myself there. Sally and 78 are at index 1. Greg and 78 are at index 2. Because they are units that go together. The brackets make them one element of the original list. So you have to get that element out and then manipulate the internal list separately from the external list. You can print out any element from any list. The first one is using forward indexing. The second one is using rear indexing. Like I said, I give you some examples of that, but I don't expect to see it in your code. If you use it, it's fine, and it works, it's fine. But the examples and stuff I will do with you on Wednesday for the lab and the assignment, I will always use front indexing because that's just how my brain works. Now I have a son who's dyslexic, so sometimes doing things from the back works easier for him. If that's the case for you, it's fine. Just be aware. You can use the slice operators on lists just like you use on strings, and you can make shorter lists out of the longer lists. This comes in handy for like huge databases and you want to just get A through M. You could slice it. Or if you wanted to break it into units of 200 files, you could slice it at 0 to 200 and then 200 to 400 and so on and so forth. That makes sense? Y'all awake back there? Okay, just checking. I wish they wouldn't cut the grass and blow leaves during class, but then. All right. Same thing, you can use the same kind of for loops for lists that you did for strings. So you can have the current student in names, and it will go through every one of them in that list. You can use the I in range and then the length of names and go through them all. If you only go through half of them, you could do length of names divided by 2. And it would stop at the midpoint. Right? You can use Boolean operators. So element in list is considered a Boolean question. If it's not in the list, it's going to return false. If it is in the list, it's going to do something or return true. So it is considered a Boolean operation. Remember, Booleans are true or false. If student in names, it's going to return true. Else, it's going to return false. This is great for search engines. If you're looking for a specific thing, you want to do something with it. If you don't find it, you want to keep moving. Because y'all wanted to know how Google worked, right? So this is an overly simplified idea of some of the original search engines. It would have a list of data. If what you were looking for was in that list, it would copy the address into another list and then would return the list to you when it was finished searching. They're much, much, much more complex now because they put all these weights in them and which one's the best example and which one's sponsored and paid for the privilege of being at the top of your list. But this is a simplified way of how they would search web pages for stuff. You can put a plus sign between two lists. And guess what happens? Same thing when you put a plus sign between two strings. It pushes the two lists together, makes a brand new list that has the content of both. Whichever one comes first before the plus sign is at the front of the list. What is at the back of the plus sign is at the back of the list. Called concatenation in strings. Then you pretty much are concatenating the list too because you're just adding two lists together to get a new list. It is not going to sort this list in any way, shape, or form though when you use a plus sign. They're going to go in exactly the order they were in. So if you had two alphabetized lists, they're no longer alphabetized when you create the new one. The front half is and the back half is, but they're not sorted together. You can append to an existing list by adding just an element to the list using the plus sign. You also can use the append function. Does the same thing. It adds whatever is inside the parentheses to the end of your list. Both work, but sometimes you'll find you want to use the append. Sometimes you'll find you want to use the plus sign. There are all sorts of things that go with lists. Strings are special, so they have their own functions because they're a data type. Lists have their own functions. You can append, you can insert, you can pop, you can sort, you can reverse, you can index, you can count, you can remove. Right? Somebody's usually at this point says pop. What does pop mean? Pop is an old term for when we used to have stacks and you would pop the information off the top. It would take an element, the first element out. In this case, it's the last element in the list. It pops the last thing off. Now, when it does it, it removes it and returns it. So it's now no longer, if you use pop, it's no longer in the list. You've edited your list. So if you're just trying to look at data, don't use pop. If you're trying to look at it and remove it, that's when you would use pop. Insert is great because you can actually put something into the list at a specific location. So if you were trying to sort the list, then you would. Sorry, it's my son's. Sorry, my son's texting me and calling me. Yeah, and children don't get any easier when they get to be 17. Adult children are just as bad as younger children. All right, so ignore the audio settings thing. I know I need to do it back well. Remember that these are there. Let's see if this link works. It does. So it takes you straight to the list and it explains to you what they do and how to use them. It even has some examples down here. Right. This can come in handy because we're going to do lists and things. This time we're going to do files next one. And then our project 3 combines files and lists together. So remember that these slides exist and these pages exist because they'll come in handy when you get to the project and you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Unless you just like rewriting code for some reason. You can use functions like min, max, and average. They are functions that will automatically get you the minimum value in a function or in a list, the maximum value in a list, and the average value in a list. Now, this works best on numbers.
Mhm.
Will it work with strings? Yeah, but you're probably not going to get exactly what you think you're going to get. So we're going to, well, the average is not actually a function, but min and max are. We're going to write code in our lab to get the average value of a list of numbers. So we're going to do a great simple grade book kind of thing. What's the class average? What was the minimum grade? What was the maximum grade? Right? Pretty straightforward kind of stuff. And oddly enough, we've done the min and max and average of lots of things by this point. So that should be old news to you as far as the logic, right? It's going to be the same way though. We're going to use a for loop to navigate our way through our list. And we're going to create variables that total up the value, and then we're going to divide it by the number of values we have. So that's all the slides I have. So on Wednesday, I'm going to do lab 7 with you like I normally do. I also will probably start assignment 7 with you because lab 7 is fairly short in my opinion. Lists are new, but the other concepts we're doing are not going to be that new. We've already done loops. We've already done averages. We've already done the basic stuff. So that's my plan for Wednesday, and I'm going to do all of lab 7 with you. I'm going to, if nothing else, walk you through assignment 7, since I'm not going to be here on Friday. But we may actually write some code from assignment 7 also if we have enough time. Questions? All right, I'm going to cut you loose early because obviously I'm done. Files is also a short kind of lecture when we get to it. If you are still struggling with the project that is due tomorrow at midnight, feel free to hang out and I will answer a few questions.